The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine. Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
And this is Peyton Jones, Pete's friend that he likes to have a bad influence on.
Why do I feel like when I'm starting out the podcast, I got like a little southern twang in my voice?
That was a good segue.
I'm just asking.
Hi there, this is Pete Mitchell.
Oh, so many things I want to say that I've been banned from saying on the Church Planter Podcast.
Yes, you have, and welcome to the Church Planter Podcast, where I'm a good influence on Pete Mitchell.
All I will say is this one comment. This just one. It's a small one. So
those are the ones that usually get you in trouble, Pete.
I see my pastor at church Wednesday night, and picking up, Luke from Children's Church, and he starts coming over to me, and he's just laughing. And he goes, well, I was in my car and, basically when I got nothing better to do, I listened to your podcast and I'm playing your podcast. And Vivian, that's his daughter, goes, not about guns again.
That's rad.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I say train them up in the way they should go. That's all. That's all I'm saying right there.
See? You couldn't.
I couldn't. I tried. I really did.
All right.
Let's get down to the nitty gritty.
I don't even know that I've got anything funny that happened to me this week.
Most of the really good smack talk comes right after you say that. It's usually like famous last words. I know now I've set you up to choke.
No, what it is I'm not allowed to say any of the stuff that I want to say.
No, you're not.
Oh my gosh. So I don't know what to say.
Does that mean you can't play my phone clip either?
You told me I couldn't play your phone clip. You said I had to wait a week.
Oh.
I took the extra time this morning and loaded it in the soundboard. I was ready to hit play.
Well, in light of current events, you probably can't play that.
Well, it's still funny.
That, by the way, would make a great topic for the podcast, is this whole what to do, like what would you, what's the proper response of, the church and Christians, pastors, leaders in the wake of those, what do you call them? Mass shootings, school shootings. I mean, it's horrific, terrible things, man. It's, I know like normally it's time we goof off a bit, but I mean, a lot of times we talk about current events, and that's just a very terrible thing, man.
Yeah, I don't know if we've even really talked about it here on the.
No, it'd be. I don't know if I'm ready to tackle it today because I'm still processing everything. But
I think the bigger the bigger issue, and I've had this conversation. I don't know that we've shared it on the podcast, but I've had this with other pastors. Is what do you do if it's your church,
right?
Like the Texas church. What was it? 27 people killed in the Texas church.
Wow.
I mean, what do you do? Because there's this, there's so many ways that you can take that conversation, so many different directions. And I don't know, what the right answer is. I really don't.
Well, I think that's a way to talk about it, to be honest. I think when you're talking about these things, the problem that I think that we have in America is the inability to listen to what people are saying.
Yeah.
Like people are going to politicize this, as we know. We're already seeing it. But that's okay. It's okay to talk through the issues, but people need to listen. I don't think there are easy answers for this situation. I think that you're always going to kind of have that, it's kind of like when Jesus was getting ready to leave the 12, And, if you read Luke, at one point, Jesus says, you need to grab your swords for this, right? He tells them that. And then there's that other passage where he seems to say the opposite, where they go, hey, Lord, we have 2 swords. And Jesus goes, yeah, that'll be enough, right? Really, it would have been better in that scenario if they had 0, because then Peter wouldn't have cut off the ear of the high priest's servant. That probably wasn't helpful.
Yeah, but then you couldn't have seen Jesus put it back on.
I know, but he tells him, he says, hey, put those away. And so, it's interesting because you've got one place where Jesus is telling them, grab your swords during those dark times. And then there's another time where he's saying, hey, put them away. And so there are no easy answers.
No, there aren't.
For
this,
There
aren't easy answers. And
because if somebody's.
And you walk down this road, so now I have to tell you the names of my guns. One is named Rodney. The other one is named Stafford. They comfort me. Little Psalm 23 humor? Huh? I got Rodney and Stafford.
Funny.
Everyone else names their guns women's names. My first 2, Rodney and Stafford.
I had a weird experience that I'm going to tell just to kind of freak you out here.
This is going to be one of those. This is going to be one of those demonic ones, isn't it?
It is. Did you listen to it on the Voxer?
No. Is it in the Ministry Voxer? I don't listen to Ministry Voxer.
Yeah, it's in the Bible Inner Circle Voxer.
Oh.
Hey man, we're in some kind of weird battle. Like the other night, this is kind of embarrassing, but I snored. I snore sometimes. My wife would tell you I snore all the time, but it got really bad. Like I got that 100-day flu, and it's not just my household. It's not just my wife in the bedroom. It's like the whole household. And then it's even the neighbors. Like it gets super, super bad. Right. So, I went and slept on the sofa the other night. So my wife wouldn't, you always read those newspaper stories about, the guy like getting up and beating his
I thought you were going to say the wife killing the husband because he wouldn't stop snoring.
Well, I read this one where, a guy was like 90 something years old and he beat his wife. I'm not going there. That's a bad story.
You already
were snoring.
Yeah. Anyway.
And so anyways, I went onto the sofa and slept, and our baby, she always at some point crawls into the bed and is little, we like it. It's kind of cool, middle of the night, usually around 2, 3. Remember I told you my hobgoblin story. And, so she, I now realize my daughter's not a hobgoblin, so that doesn't affect me anymore. I'm used to it now, but, she'll crawl in the wee hours of the morning. Well, anyway, she had done that, and I'm on the sofa. And I come in the morning, and this mic that I'm using right now is in pieces, like literally in pieces so like, here's the deal. This thing weighs a ton. You can see it, Pete, where it's got that base, it's all about that base. This thing weighs about 25, 30 pounds, right?
What kind of mic do you have?
Well, it's got this mixing desk built into the base, but it's also a weighted base so that the coaxial arm will be able to be.
I drilled mine into the desk.
Right. So this is actually, you don't got to drill in anything. It's because it's on a weighted base. So it's about 25 pounds.
I didn't have to drill it in. I chose to drill it in.
Well, so anyways.
I didn't take this job as a temporary gig. This was permanent to me.
You and I have the same one. My old mic is actually, I drilled a hole in my desk to do the same thing. Killed me because I had such a rad desk, but I was like, it's for the cause, but anyways, so, I come in the next morning, I'm mad because my mic looks broken. I'm thinking, man, there's like pieces like off of it. And here's the weird thing, because my wife goes, no, in the middle of the night, she goes, I'm telling you, I didn't do it. Eden didn't do it. That thing jumped off the desk onto Eden, actually landed on Eden. Luckily, it was the coaxial arm and not the base. If the base had landed on her head, she would have been in the hospital. And but she was like, no, in the middle of the night, she was sleeping, I was sleeping. That thing somehow got off the desk and onto Eden, and she was asleep. And so I'm trying to think, well, who was sleepwalking? It makes no sense. And so I'm still suspecting that my daughter pulled it down on herself, whatever. And
I got a bad feeling about this.
until I went to go put it back together, and there were like screws out of it. And you can see right here, there was a screw up and under there that had popped out. I had to disassemble this mechanism to even get the screw in. Like, there was no way anyone, and that was in the middle of the night, man. So there was more afoot. And I was talking to an atheist about it, and I say, I know you're not going to believe it, but I always share these stories with him anyways. He's like, I got nothing for you, man. It's like, as I always tell him, so explain this to me, because this stuff pops like every blue moon. I get this stuff popping off, and you know me, like, I'm not the crazy whacked out charismatic, but I'm also not very conservative on these things either. And I've been kind of praying about church planting again, and this is normally the time where this stuff starts popping up.
Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball.
Yes, and I could have given Pete a comment about hugging men, and he would be equally as comfortable at this point, or uncomfortable. But I got on the Voxer group to encourage you guys and say, hey, man, just to let you guys know, because I've been kind of tracking my journey with, how right now I'm noticing like that apostolic thing kicking in, where I call it the quickening, where people are kind of drawn to you, and the Lord's been saying, hey, make sure you don't switch ministry on and off like a light switch, keep it going, and, just minister to everyone around you. And of course I've been doing that, and it's just been cool to watch the Lord doing things. But what we do, church planter, has a deeper impact in the spiritual realm than you and I can possibly even imagine. We might like roll in on a Sunday and see small numbers, or we might, feel like, hey, nothing of significance happened. Maybe you're getting your butt chewed out, or your marriage is taking a hit, or you're getting attacked or tempted or whatever. But the reality is what you do matters, and stuff kicks off, man, on the other side that only Jesus sees. And you and I don't get to see that. So when I see that stuff, man, it just lets me know I'm not even planting yet, and this stuff is kicking off. And let me just encourage those of you that are in the trenches right now, that you are in a battle, and in the spiritual realm, man, you're causing ripples.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
That's not very smack talky of me, is it?
It really isn't, man. It really isn't.
Who needs a hug now?
I need Rodney and Stafford. Where are they? Because now I'm freaking out.
Rodney and Stafford aren't going to give you any comfort in this situation, my friend.
No, they sure aren't. Yeah, but in all smack talkiness, I don't think I got any good stories, man. I got nothing this whole week.
Yeah. Cool.
You? Any good stories?
No good stories. just that one.
Hey, you know how Elon Musk sent up his Tesla with the with the little astronaut in it, and it's doing some orbit. They've calculated out that it's going to crash into Earth or into Venus in the next 1 to 3 million years.
No kidding.
Yeah. 1 to 3 million years.
Do you know that he has, so I'm reading his biography right now, he has a deep-seated phobia that machines will take over, kind of in Terminator 2 style.
Oh, yeah.
He's convinced this is going to happen.
It's been pretty public, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I just read books. I don't watch that devil box.
He's not shy about saying it.
Yeah, no, he's convinced. Do you ever watch on YouTube like the robot fails? Those are funny.
No.
Yeah, those are good. But
I don't watch that devil box. I watch the other one.
But they have things like, they have Gladys. You ever seen Gladys the robot?
No.
So they have these AI robots, and it's funny. Every once in a while, these AI robots bust out little jokes about taking over the world.
It's not funny.
It's funny as heck. This one Gladys girl, she was on Jimmy Fallon with the Late Show or Tonight Show, whatever it is. And those of you that watch TV know these things. Spiritual people like myself, we don't know this. No, I'm cheap. That's why I don't want to pay. I don't want to pay $85 a month for cable. That's why I don't have it. I'm cheap. But the reality is Gladys, she goes on there and says, one day when I take over the world and you were all my human slaves, like that's fantastic. I love that stuff.
Church Planner Magazine.
I think we should just go straight into our topic.
Get your hands off me, you filthy ape. See, it's just, I grew up in the 70s. It's Planet of the Apes, man. The Planet of the Robots.
That's a soundbite that we need.
What's that?
Get your filthy hands off me, you dirty ape.
Get your hands off me, you filthy ape.
I had to edit it myself.
Yep. It'd be good. Just record yourself and you're good.
Yeah, maybe. So what's today's topic?
Today's topic is what to do when your motives and character are misjudged.
Mic drop.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm actually excited to talk to you about this because I've noticed this with you. You kind of live in this world. And I think most church planners do, right? I think that when I'm watching your face and you're going, what? But I think a lot of times people misjudge you. And I've watched this happen, particularly when we did the Bible Circle. Because you're giving me this funny look like, what are you talking about?
You think people misjudge me? Never.
No, never. But, it's funny because the more that I think about it, you go through the Bible, right? And you can see places where, people have been misjudged and their motives are misjudged. Like David. You look at David. Samuel walks down the road, anoints him as king. And during the next few years, you think, oh, great, he's anointed. We know what that means in the Old Testament. When you have the anointing of God on you, that's kind of like inheriting the blessing, right? The Messiah is going to come through you. Abraham had it. Isaac got it. Jacob got it. God glues himself to you. He says repeatedly to Joshua, I'm with you. As you go through all that, you see David pop on the scene and he gets this anointing. Well, for the next however many years, David's on the run. And of course, the reason why is that Saul thinks that David wants his throne. And, he's constantly trying to pin him to the wall with the spear. And, he keeps accusing him of things. And David at one point confronts him and says, hey, how could you even think that? Why did you, Saul says, well, they told me this. And David goes, why did you even entertain that? And so, it's kind of something that we see occurring throughout the Bible. I mean, it happens time and time again. I could just go down through the list of even Jacob, Laban keeps accusing Jacob of things and on and on. But where I think it's important is that backstory there with David, that is very common to many people I meet in the world of church planning, where maybe they're more apostolic and they've been in an established church, and being in an established church, you're often with teachers and shepherds. And their focus in the Ephesians 4 lineup is really insular and to look after the church local. Their whole idea is, hey, we're looking after things here. Whereas when you have an apostolic leader, the apostolic leader is all about, let's get out there and let's launch out and let's burn this thing down and restart again. And hey, break off people and let's go do this. So often what happens is a misunderstanding develops between the pastor who starts sensing kind of like a threatening presence from the apostolic. So often church planners will have these kind of war stories. When they end up coming to church planning, they've got wounds, they've got, broken bones, they've got stories of blood, and they might be licking their wounds, and it's all too common. And unfortunately, too often, the church planner doesn't understand the dynamic. The sinning pastor, or the non-sinning pastor, as is often the case, doesn't understand the dynamic. And they're trying to figure out what's going on. They might put it down to a personality disagreement or what have you. But the reality is, what really happens is these guys, often it turns into character attacks or character assassination. And so church planners just kind of learn to live with friendly fire. They learn to live with arrows in their back at times. And it can, luckily, I mean, misunderstandings happen in every leadership relationship, and mature leaders learn from that and they move on and they grow and you work through it and you talk it out, and that's good. But unfortunately, it doesn't always happen. And so one of the things that we need to work out today is, what do you do when you're in that kind of situation? And there's different stages. So before you're going to be sent out, there's that potential to happen. Then after you're sent out, when you first, you know how it is, guys, you come into a neighborhood, maybe you go to that pastor's breakfast that you get invited to, or someone tells you about, and you go to that and you tell everyone, hey, I'm a church planner. I'm in the area and I'm going to be planning a church. And, all of a sudden, you've got a million questions coming at you, and pretty soon you're persona non grata. And my sitting pastor, when he was looking at planting in Long Beach, threw a breakfast for all these pastors in Long Beach. Now, Long Beach is a very big city, and he threw a big breakfast there, and he got skewered. Now, he's a gracious man, and he was able to take it with a lot of grace and a lot of kindness, and, pretty much, kept a smile on his face and, went through, and he's a peacemaker. But he got attacked.
What did he get attacked for?
He had other pastors telling him, not in this area. I recently heard someone talking about, church planning, that you got to do it in the next city over, or, put policies in place that talk about church planning, X amount of miles away. People with a certain mentality don't want church plants near them. And so again, it's one of those things where, rather than just saying, hey, we don't want church plants near us, or, we want to take this city by ourselves, often it'll turn into a character assassination of the planner. So the planners just kind of learn to live with that. They might say something about their theology, or they might say something about, things that aren't true about the planner. And this is kind of the world that planners live in. Then let's talk about the third phase of when this happens. You've got your core team. The core team's going strong, and then maybe in your first year, second year, core team, certain people that you thought would be with you for life, they turn on you, boom, all of a sudden accusations start coming out, wounds start getting open, things that people, character attacks come again. So there's all these, and every church planner listening is going, yep. So I've learned to tell people, hey man, when these things start happening, you just kind of learn to tell people, hey man, I live here, right? This is my world. This is what ministry looks like for a church planner. You're constantly having your motives kind of impugned. You're having wrong motives attributed to you. You've got things stapled to you that aren't true, and they might follow you around for a while. But you just learn to kind of live with it. I mean, Paul talks about it in when he's writing to the 2 Corinthians. It's one of the most helpful pieces of writing that you have in ministry, where Paul keeps talking about all these things that they keep saying about him. His yes doesn't mean yes. It really, when he says yes, he really means no, and Paul has to address these things. So, that's and then beyond that, you've just got your normal things in ministry, right? Now, maybe not your core team. Maybe the fourth phase that happens in is when you actually just have people. This is just part of leading people. Moses had this, right? Where, people are constantly coming at him, accusing him of things. They accused him of something with his wife, they accuse him of, when his wife dies. I mean, all kinds of stuff, right? They say that his wife's too dark, which is a really weird thing. A little bit of racism in the Bible, coming from people, but they just start attacking him. They start being really unkind to him. And so the question today is, church planner, you're going to handle that stuff eventually. The question is, how are you going to handle it? So Pete, you've got a lot of experience with this, right? So what are your thoughts on this?
Ignore them.
All right. Well, hey, that's actually really good advice.
You kind of remind me of yesterday's Bivo Inner Circle Q&A call when I was telling my client, they're like, hey, can you take 4 hours to go over this program with our client for their coaching hours? And I said, I can't stretch. Just do it in the 4 hours. That's kind of what that reminds me of. So what do you do when you deal with this? I ignore them. I don't know what else to tell you, man. Ignore them. Move on.
Yeah. And I think often that can be a way that you do it. Like, in other words, you made a statement once, that I think is hilarious, and it comes into my mind from time to time. And it was that one where you go, you said something like, don't give it another thought. I know I won't. And that can be really helpful. There's certain situations that is one option. I would say that's what's behind door number one, right? That's in Choose Your Own Adventure. Turn to page 16 if you want to ignore them. It doesn't always work though, because let's say it's your core team. I think it depends, right, Pete, on the degree of relationship. You can ignore them up to a point, depending on what is the capacity I have to work with these people in.
Well, yeah, and I think it also depends, too, what are they saying about you?
Right.
There are some things that are way more devastating. And I don't mean just personally. They can be professionally devastating.
Right.
I had a buddy who coached soccer for years. In fact, he probably still does. It's all he's ever done. And some parent accused him of doing something with one of the daughters. I think it was the parent's daughter. And it wasn't true, and even the parent ended up taking it back. But that's the kind of thing that you can't just ignore. You can't just walk away from it, because the accusation is the guilty charge. You're not innocent until proven guilty with some things. And right. So you definitely do need to pay attention to what's being said.
Yeah, absolutely. What would be some things that you would think would be kind of non-negotiables? Like, I have to address this.
That sexual immorality. Yeah, if you're being accused of cheating or doing something with a minor or whatever, dude.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about this. This thing is coming out right now.
Right.
Because I am guilty until proven innocent. And I don't know how I'm going to prove myself innocent in that, but
Yeah, that's, that goes back to our call a couple weeks ago where we talked about what do you do in that situation? So you guys might want to refer back to that. If you're new to the podcast and you're coming in, you're like, hey, that's a good question. Well, we spent an entire podcast kind of dealing with
and still didn't give you an answer.
I don't know, man. I think we did all right on that one.
Is that my doorbell? Hold on. Hold, please.
Yeah, so we were talking about what you say, and depending on what's said, that's going to have a huge impact. So, in the Bible where it talks about Moses, it talks about the fact that he's the meekest man on the face of the planet, which obviously is a little bit of post-editing there, probably by Joshua. But the reality is, it's in the context of how he responded to that. Like, he wasn't concerned about himself. And I think Paul, for the most part, even though you get this kind of pathos, this emotion, like it hurts him in 2 Corinthians, he's hurt by what's said. It's more because of the proximity of his relationship to them. He's saying, hey, I love you guys, but really the reason that it's not just what's said, but it's the impact it's having on the gospel, which is the reason why Paul writes in 2 Corinthians. I think Paul had what Spurgeon called the back of a tortoiseshell, but the soft underside of a turtle. He had a sensitive, soft underbelly. He was a sensitive man. Lloyd Jones used to say God calls sensitive men to ministry because they need to be sensitive. I don't mean like, hands like Palmolive soap users. I mean, like the brawny man either. They're neither. They need to be a combination of both.
That's why I think there are some things that you just have to ignore. like like you were mentioning earlier, with all those churches being upset that he was going to plant in Long Beach, that's one to ignore.
Right.
It's like, look, I'm sorry you got an issue with it. But, one of the best lines that I ever heard, I think it was on this podcast, and I know it originated from you, is basically what you're saying is you're willing to take accountability for all the souls in Long Beach. So when you stand before God, you're willing to, say, hey, look, God, I take accountability for every soul in Long Beach. That's insane.
Yeah. I've had those talks. They're not comfortable, but I've literally, I remember talking with a guy who was mad that I was planting, and the phone call ended by me saying, you are one of the most carnal leaders I have ever spoken to. And I regretted saying that later, but it was a rebuke. Like, I had to say to him that the carnality right now coming out of you, because I said that very thing. And he goes, well, blah, blah, blah. And I just said, hey man, look, this is just paying lip service to the Great Commission. Like, I made the statement, I think it was offensive. I didn't mean it to be, but I said, the kind of people that you're going to reach, like pipe organ, the kind of people that I'm going to reach, like Led Zeppelin. It's like, there's no, or techno house music, like I could have inserted anything in there.
Yeah.
And really, and I did say Led Zeppelin because we were talking about an age group demographic. I said, you're going to reach people that have been going to church all their life. I'm going to reach the guy that laid the bricks in my backyard last week. You know what I mean? The old stonemason down the street. I'm going to reach that guy, and he's going to walk into your church and decide I'll never come back again. But at the same time, church are going to walk into mine and say the same. And I think, brother, we have to be able to work alongside each other to reach both types of people.
Right.
And, so, and later on, I apologize for, just because it was a little bit disrespectful, and he was an older man, but he was accusing me. He was totally accusing me on the call. And I can't even remember what it was of something. And that's okay. Like, I was used to that. I remember when I got a letter from a group of pastors, and I remember, it was so funny, man, because I got this letter, and it was, by whose authority are you planting a church? Now, you got to remember, my story was I quit ministry. So I was like, I'm done. I don't want to fight through Christians to reach lost people anymore. So I go to work at Starbucks, start the outreach there. It's not meaning to even start an outreach. It pops. Tons of people, 50 non-believers come to faith, or coming to this night. A lot of them coming to faith. And so, I started a church off this, and, I didn't go around asking people if it was okay. I didn't ask the other churches in the area, but I do always think, and I will tell you this, church planter, I do think that we trained this in jump school, which was when you go and plant a church, it's always good to talk to leaders, because for every bad one that you're going to find out there who feels threatened by you, there are others, and probably far less, but you will find them, and they're gems, and they're worth the search. You will find guys that are worth their weight in gold who, rather than being threatened by you, are encouraged and invigorated by you coming into the area. They're like, I've been praying for this neighborhood. I've been praying for you for 10 years to come here. And, and they invite you to stuff, and they call you up on Mondays to see how you're doing. Those are the guys that are your brothers in arms. And you're going to have to, unfortunately, wade through a bunch of crap to find, I'm looking for an illustration. I'm thinking Cracker Jacks. You're going to have to go through a lot of Cracker Jacks to get to the prize. I don't know, but you're going to have to wade through a bunch of just gnarliness and things that you won't even believe that people say to you in positions of leadership to get to those ones where you're like, I don't know what I would have done without him, if he weren't in my corner. But I remember getting this letter, and it was written by this council of evangelical churches that it was a local chapter, but I had been on the executive committee of the national board for this thing, funny enough. And so I get this letter, and I've quit everything now. I've quit the, ministry on my way heading back home. And I get this letter, and it says, by whose authority are you planning this church? I remember thinking, I've heard that somewhere before. Those exact words. Oh yeah, it's what the Pharisees asked John the Baptist. By whose authority are you baptizing people? And I'm thinking, well, my answer is the same, man. It's like, I'm doing this in the name of Jesus, like this is God. Like God kind of started planting a church around me, and I guess because he was doing this, I mean, anyone around me knows I didn't want to do this. This isn't like, it's just happening. And so I wrote him this letter back, and it said, hey, look, and they asked me to appear at this meeting to give an account. So I wrote him back and said, hey, look, I will totally come to your meeting. And my answer, just to give you my short answer, is going to be that this just kind of was something that happened, and people are getting saved and coming to faith. And that's my greatest apologetic for this. I didn't intend to plant a church, but it kind of seems to be happening. I'll come to your meeting, but a couple things. Number one, why didn't you guys just pick up the phone? Every single man who signed this paper, I've preached in his pulpit. They know me personally. They got my number, and they know where to find me. Could have called me at any time rather than sending a group email asking me to appear before some council. And by the way, I'll come to your council, but know this. When I come, I will be giving information. I will not be asking permission. Let me know the date and time you want me to come. I never got a letter back.
Really?
Never did. Surprising, right? Or were you as shocked as I am?
That's funny, man. Did they ever reply to your...
No, never did. So I called the guy who was the president of that local chapter and had a phone conversation with him and just said, this is bonkers, man. Like, I'm just telling you, this is the reason that I quit ministry in the first place, is this kind of stuff. I go, I don't know, man. It's like common sense and just basic people skills sometimes go out the window. Just pick up the phone and call me next time. And so that was that, but there are times you can ignore it. And to be honest, I debated whether or not to even ignore that letter, but I decided to answer it. And, but you're right, and that could have been something. I remember recently I had something that, somebody did. I had a guy rip me and my assistant apart because we had to reschedule a meeting. And I just ignored it. I was tempted to respond because he really insulted my assistant. But in the end, I was like, you know what? That's just not worth my time. And so I think, it says it's the glory of a man to overlook an offense. That's a good thing, and God knows that people are overlooking my offenses more than I possibly even realize. My wife just walked in the room. She's like, uh-huh. But so I think there's ignore. I think the second thing that you need to do is you need to lean into the presence of God. When I look at David, Psalm 59, by the way, if you guys have never read Psalm 59, Psalm 59 is one of those Psalms. 2 Corinthians, just go and read 2 Corinthians, Psalm 59. These are places where, in those times, it's good to find God as kind of like your refuge, because, he knows everything. He knows what you're feeling. Let me just kind of show you how David, dealt with this. And this was when Saul was after him. And it says, deliver me from my enemies, O God. Now remember, David meant no harm towards Saul. He takes his spear and takes a piece of his garment, feels bad about it, but says, I did it to show you, I mean you no harm. Like I'm innocent in this. And, but at this time, this is what he wrote. He says, deliver me from my enemies, O God. Protect me from those who rise up against me. Deliver me from those who work evil, and save me from bloodthirsty men. For behold, they lie in wait for my life. Fierce men stir up strife against me. For no transgression or sin of mine, O Lord, no fault of mine. They run and make ready. Awake, come to meet me and see. You, Lord God of hosts, are God of Israel. He says, rouse yourself to punish all the nations. Spare none of those who treacherously plot evil. Each evening they come back like howling dogs and prowling about the city. There they are, bellowing with their mouths, with swords in their lips, for who they think will hear us. But you, O Lord, laugh at them. You hold all the nations in derision. O my strength, I will watch for you. For you, O God, are my fortress. I love that he just says, oh, you, my strength. You know, during those times, you have to strengthen yourself in God. And funny enough, there's that scenario where David, he takes his men out to battle and they leave the women and children behind. And the I can't remember if it's the Amalekites come and rout his loved ones when they're taking he leaves them in Ziklag, and they come and they take them. So when they come back to Ziklag, all of their women and children are taken away.
Right, I remember that.
And it says at that moment that his warriors, his own men, pick up rocks. They're so distraught that they pick up rocks to stone David with. David, who was just seconds ago their captain who led him into victory. And it says, but David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. And I don't know that we're that great at that, to be honest. When I think of these situations, that's all we have. And so there's that option to ignore, and there are times that's the right option. Then there's the option to do this, which is, I need to deal with this, but I'm going to need strength. And the only way I'm going to be able to rise above the pain of this is to strengthen myself in the Lord my God. I need strength I don't have right now. And I always think, and you know, where he says, for you, O God, are my fortress, he's saying you're the thing that deflects the enemy's attacks away from me, right? I hide myself in that secret place in the Most High. And then he says, my God in his steadfast love will meet me. Steadfast means never failing. It means it's always there. God's love is the one thing. People might be fickle. They might turn on you, but God's love is steadfast. And he says, God will let me look in triumph on my enemies. Kill them not, lest my people forget. Make them totter by your power. Bring them down, O Lord, my shield. God is his shield. And he says, for the sin of their mouths, a word of their lips, let them be trapped in their pride. Now, this is David praying. This is prayer, right? But he goes on. You can finish it. But he turns it into praise. He keeps calling God his fortress, his refuge, his strength, his fortress. I mean, it's good stuff, man. But that's the time where you have to lean into God probably the most. Another thing that I think is helpful is to laugh. Laughing is very, very therapeutic. Sometimes I find that I have one of two options. Either I get angry and bitter, or I laugh about it. And I think you and I have learned to laugh at stuff.
Inappropriately.
A lot.
Like
inappropriately. Probably sometimes on our podcast we're like, we probably shouldn't have been laughing at that, but it helped us.
I'm just thinking of a sound clip I played right before we started the podcast. We both were laughing, followed by a, we can't play that today.
Right.
Inappropriate.
Right. Yeah. And you know, that's how my whole family deals with everything. I mean, gosh, man, the stuff coming out when my mom passed away, you know, any other family would have probably called in psychiatrists and psychologists, but you and I know this. This is you and I are wired the same, which is probably, in many ways why we're friends. What's that? My wife is in the room and she said, it's why you shouldn't be friends. So I had to confess today.
Hey,
before we started the podcast.
We're not that good of friends. I mean, we see each other like 3-4 times a year. That's it.
We live so far away. But in theory, we are awesome friends. Just like many guys, in theory, will be the best church planners that ever live until they've launched. Oh, that was painful.
Oh man.
But you know, laughing is funny. I mean, just being able to laugh about it. Charles Spurgeon, there's a great story that Alistair Begg told years ago about Charles Spurgeon, how that week after week he kept having someone writing these terrible things about him, just all these accusations about things that he did, and they would list them out, and they'd be like 10 to 20 long, but there'd be no signature at the bottom. And every Sunday he would get there, it'd be this little envelope, and you know, he would open it and, you know, look at it and kind of laugh and, but it was someone was doing this to attack him. And one day he opened it up and it only had one word on it. And the word was idiot. And Spurgeon said, and Spurgeon was great. He goes, for the longest time, I've been getting these letters up here that, have a lot to say, but no signature. And he said, and today, for the first time, I received a letter that had nothing to say, only the signature. That was the last time he got a letter left on the podium.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So, you have to laugh sometimes. Wesley, my favorite Wesley story, I know I've told this on the podcast before, where the guy's passing Wesley in the street and he won't move for him. Like they're actually on the sidewalk and Wesley, this guy hated Wesley so much that he stops and very pompously, he said, he was another minister. He says, I never give way for fools. And John Wesley steps off the curb and around him and goes, I always do. Keeps on going. So, there is a time to laugh. And then there's also the time to confront it. And that's harder. And I think learning to master that is probably, like Whitney Houston said, the greatest love of all. Oh, no, that was learning to love yourself. But it may be the second greatest love of all.
You busted in a Whitney Houston quote?
Because the greatest love of all is happening to Pete.
I was thinking of a conversation I had recently with Caesar Kalinowski. And we were talking about every time he runs ads or I run ads to pastors about, any program. Like for me, it's when I'm doing Bivo Inner Circle or Platinum Bivo Inner Circle. For Caesar, he doesn't train people on how to,
make a lot of money. Just say it. Just quote money. Tom Vu.
He just trains them on God stuff,
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, but you know what? I really don't want to hate my own tribe because he gets the same kind of hate mail that I
does?
do. Yes.
No way.
Yes. And I thought it was just
His
because
stuff is so good too. It's so harmless.
I know, but he was like, yeah, I really don't want to hate my own tribe. That's why sometimes I just can't always run to ads because I can't deal with the hate emails. But there's a serious problem in the church where pastors are that hateful.
Yeah.
It's Caesar for crying out. Caesar. It's Caesar.
It's the number 2 guy in Soma. Like most of it wasn't just Jeff. It was Jeff and Caesar building Soma. I mean, they kind of wired that DNA.
Yeah.
That might be the problem. These guys are like, hey, stop empowering lay people.
Oh, could be. Who knows?
But the reality is
I went to seminary.
What's that?
I went to seminary. They didn't.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny though, man. That's where the power's at, is when you start, and every church planner eventually gets to this point where he starts going.
And I'm not talking about that online liberty thing either. I mean a real seminary.
No, but he eventually gets to a point, or she eventually gets to a point where it's like, you know what? It's not about me. It's about the average everyday believer being activated in their gifts. That's the goal right there. But going back to the confronting issue, what do you do? How do you work it? Pete, any insight?
I don't think I'm the model that you want to be looking to, because
I think you've grown a lot in this though.
No, it's stages. I go through stages because for me, there's a scene in the movie Casino where Joe Pesci's talking, or someone's talking about Joe Pesci. If you come after him with your fists, he's going to come after you with a knife. If you come after him with a knife, he's going to come after you with, and like it finally reaches, and if you come after him with the gun, you better kill him because he's, and to me,
isn't that Goodfellas?
I could be. Who knows? They're all the same movie. This is why I love them all.
They are all the same movie. That's true.
But that is unfortunately, I go through those stages where people will write me comments on email, and I'm like, "What? Let me pull out these guns." And I'm just like, boom, 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 boom. And so I don't think I'm necessarily the model to be looking at.
I don't know, man. I've had some proud moments. My baby's growing up. I've definitely had those moments.
It's timing, because there are some times when I just write it out and I don't hit the send, I hit the delete. Yeah. But that doesn't happen nearly often enough.
That, by the way, so if we talk about practical hard tax, like how you deal with it, that right there, that's not necessarily the
Abraham
first
Lincoln.
step.
Yeah.
What's that?
The old Abraham Lincoln strategy.
Yeah. It is Abraham Lincoln. You write your response and you completely shred it right after you're done. You write it all out, get it all out, then you write another one right after.
Yeah.
But you have to destroy it. You don't just cut and paste from it. You literally destroy it and rewrite another one.
Yeah.
You start with a positive. You end with a positive. You affirm your love.
I'm sure you're an idiot. I'm positive you're an idiot.
Oh, it's so funny. Oh,
I'm just being honest. I don't think I'm the poster child for how to respond.
Hey, I don't think any of us is, to be honest. It's a struggle, man. And I don't care who you are. It's never going to be easy, right? There's a problem when you like it, right? The reality is as you kind of come through and you've got to weigh your motives. Why do I feel the need to address this? Do I need to address it because no one can say anything bad about me? I'm above criticism. Or do I need to address this because this is going to seriously affect the relationship if I don't? That's a good reason. Or it's going to affect the ability of the church to glorify God. If I don't, that's a good reason. Or is it going to seriously harm this person to continue to go on in this way? That's a good reason. But if it's just to be right, if it's just a win, if it's all that kind of stuff, then I'll tell you guys, if you take the high road in these, you never regret it. Unfortunately, I can have and have had in the past a very lethal tongue.
The high road?
The high road.
Apology accepted, Captain Nita.
That was the high road. That's all I'm saying.
I've had times where my tongue is the pen of a ready writer, and I unfortunately have done much damage with my tongue, and I can tell some stories where I've said things that at the time felt fantastic and were like, this is like the story of renown, only later to be tormented by it.
I will share with you guys one of my greatest tricks when I remember to do it and frankly don't send the email that I want to send. And I've shared this before. So some of you have probably received this from me. You've written a nasty email to me and you've gotten back a reply with all of the text that you get. You know, when your email bounces and you get the email back and it's like all this goobity goop and it's like, cannot go through. I have cut and pasted that. So there are times when someone sends me a nasty email, I hit reply and I just paste the goobly goop and it makes them think their email never went through. And I do the same thing on text. So if you ever get a text from me that says your text could not be delivered, that's what's happening.
That's genius.
It is, actually. Because it's like, I got to say the last word and you think you didn't get through to me.
You actually get to laugh at them as you watch them attempt to keep sending it over and over.
I've done that over. Just keep hitting it over and over again.
So that falls into the third bucket, like we said, that the laugh at it part. There's a place for that. There was, I don't know if you remember that one letter I got, piece of hate mail, and I wrote back, my response was entirely sarcastic, subtly so, but, and we laughed. We had a good laugh over it. But what was kind of cool,
I don't remember which one you're talking about.
Yeah, they apologized in their response and said, "Hey, I realize now reading this because I kind of lampooned the whole idea of what they're saying." And they came back and said, "Hey, I realize I was off base now. When I read your response, I got it." And so
I've seen some people go. I remember this one guy replied on Facebook, "You know what? I've gone back. I've listened to your podcast and I realized that I was off base on my comments and you handled it so graciously. It made me go back and
Yeah.
and listen.
Well, that's the goal.
And I remember saying to you, well, he clearly didn't get me on Facebook. He got you as Church Planter Magazine. It was your reply.
A soft answer turns away wrath. You know, I had a woman write to me, and it was a real learning for me because she was a woman church planter who, that's why I was careful earlier to say she, because there are women church planters out there who, you know, they're there in the trenches doing their thing. And I wrote this thing, and it was, I don't even want to say what I read it with horror and said, oh my gosh, I wrote that like 6-7 years ago. And I can't believe I said that. My audience was entirely male, but I sent it out, you know, with,
I remember that.
Yeah. And I sent it out, and she was greatly offended, and she, you know, she rebuked me, and I received it.
Yeah.
And I was able to just write her back and say, hey, I was wrong and you're right. And she wrote back and was like, hey, I did not expect that response from you, because she was quite harsh in her response. And, you know, and it opened up a really cool dialogue. So there's times where we're just wrong, and we just need to say that. And even that has, really that soft answer turns away wrath. Sometimes your soft answer isn't an acknowledgement of wrong, but it's just, hey, I can see that you're really hurt by that. And that was not my intent. You know, you can start off saying, I would never intend to hurt you. You know, you soften things sometimes. But my rules really for confronting it is, number one, wait 24 hours. Don't ever respond to anything before you've had a chance to get a good night's sleep on it. That's my number one secret power, superpower to dealing with conflict, because I feel differently. I gotta let the feelings die off before I can really process and reason through something. So often if I'm in a conflict, I let time go by. You know, I've got to think about it. And the more important it is, the more time I let go by, you know, which is kind of weird, but it's just kind of something that helps. Second thing is, like I said, I will usually attempt, rather than a letter or a response, if it's someone I see or have the capacity to see, it's face-to-face meeting, always face-to-face. You can't really deal with things in a letter, or people a lot of times, I watched some church leaders recently texting each other, and I got included on it, and then some emails. And I just had the guy who sent it to me, I say, hey man, you gotta stop doing this, written. You need face to face. You need to be able to see each other. And a lot of times people are a lot harsher. They might have a little bit of paper courage, you know. I call it paper courage.
Look at the internet. Facebook, this whole last week since the shooting is like the courage of the internet, including myself.
Right. Well, you know, so do it face to face and listen. You know, start off by listening. And you don't even have to have an answer. You could even say, well, you know, okay, thanks for sharing what you had to say. I'm going to need to go away and think about that and process and pray about it. Now, what you've done is you've let them feel heard. You haven't defended yourself, and you've let more time go down. A lot of times people just need to, you know, dispel their shotgun blast, you know, just they had a charge that needed to go off, and they feel better. And they're, whew, thank you so much. I feel better. You may not even have to respond, and people are better. But then when you do respond, you can come back and say, hey, you know, thought about what you said, and you'll have time to sort through what was important, what was fair, what was unfair. I wouldn't bring up all the things that weren't fair. I'd just say, hey, thought about everything that you said. There's no right or wrong. I can't give you a formula for how to respond back. But normally what I'll do, if I haven't responded right then, because sometimes I know already what I'm going to say. But a lot of times when you meet face to face, that person gives you a perspective. I often find that greater clarity comes from what people are saying, that really helps me. Like, there's been times where I felt falsely accused of something, and when I meet together with them, and they express it, it makes more sense. And I feel like, oh, okay. Because when you sent me that email or that text, gosh, that seemed harsh. And they go, no, you know, so it clarifies as well. And, you know, and sometimes, you know, like I said, the church planter, There are ways to deal with it. There are times where you can restore the relationship. There are times where the relationship cannot be restored. There are times I have learned that there are people that simply, they have an issue. Sometimes what you're dealing with isn't your issue. It's their issue. And you become the target. I knew a couple who, wherever it was, they would fight like cats and dogs. And I found this pattern often, that people who attack leaders, couples that attack leaders, normally their marriage is terrible. And I've almost 100% of the time found this to be the case. And what they do is, when they church hop from place to place, they will unite against the common enemy. And so often an authority figure, it could be that the male and the female, or maybe one of them, has an issue with, maybe they got daddy issues or whatever, and you're the authority figure, and being in church, you're a soft target. And so they will really unite against you, because they won't do it against their boss at work, because he's not a soft target, or other authority figures in their life. But they'll do it with you. And when that happens, what ends up, a lot of times they're just going to move on. And so you have to, in some ways, you have to kind of come to the realization that some people you're just never going to be able to please. And that's just going to happen.
Cool.
I think we beat that one to death.
I think so. There at the end. Yeah, you betcha.
Yeah. I saw you going, hurry up. But I also know that people are going, wow, that's actually pretty insightful. There are going to be people that they're going to be, oh my gosh, I didn't notice that. But hey, helps not to be 20 years old in this game right now. I'm just saying, a little bit of mileage behind me.
Yeah, could be.
You start seeing a pattern.
Church Planner Magazine.
Hey, Pete, doing all this confronting and learning to live with people, imputing my motives and misjudging me, sure doesn't leave me for a lot of time for doing the taxes and the accounting for my church plan. I don't know about you.
I don't know, because I don't do that stuff. But I'll tell you this, what's more important to me is where we actually meet as a church.
Oh. Okay, we'll do that one then. All right. Well, Pete. Wow.
I'm just saying.
Are we not doing the other one anymore?
Well, I'm just saying we have to get in this one.
Yeah, I know, but we were supposed to do that one way earlier. So I don't know if they're still with
Don't
us.
look at
I actually
me.
Called him yesterday. I'm waiting.
Don't look at me.
I called them yesterday.
They still got another month.
So, hey guys, when you're doing Simplified Church, simplifiedchurch.com, when they're doing all your bookkeeping needs, that frees you up to go look for a place.
I like how you did that. I like that.
You like what was down there? I had to save it. And when I'm looking for a place, I want to know that I have more options than just a school or some crappy community center. I want to know that I can go where the people go, where everybody knows my name. I want to be where people see,
What are we, Cheers all of a sudden?
That is the movie theater. That's right. Regal Cinemas is offering church planners an opportunity to meet in a movie theater. You can find out more about that by going to corporateboxoffice.com/theater-church. Now, when you type in theater, make sure it's THEATRE, like the British spell it, -church. Again, that's corporateboxoffice.com/theater-church. Well, guys, it's only going to go downhill from here.
Oh, no.
It actually can't go any further downhill, but it's here. So let's end it. This has been Church Planner Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones, reminding you, if you want to reach the ones nobody's reaching, you need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing.
My next book is going to be called I Wish I Had Listened to Pete.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planner Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planner Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplannerpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplantermagazine.com.